the 1971 Philippine 50 Sentimo coin, a relic from a pivotal time in the country's economic and political development. This coin, once commonly used in everyday trade, now holds historical value among collectors for its design, composition, and the era it represents. In 1971, the Philippines was undergoing a complex transition. President Ferdinand Marcos was in power, and the country was still operating under a pre-martial law government. Economically, the nation was developing but facing growing inflation and unrest. The 50 Sentimo coin of this year reflects the end of an era just before radical political shifts. The 50 Sentimo denomination is part of the Philippine decimal coinage. Introduced after independence from the United States, 1 peso was divided into 100 centimo or centavos, a system inherited from both the Spanish and American periods. The obverse side features a portrait of Marcelo H. del Pilar, a renowned Filipino writer, lawyer, journalist, and revolutionary hero. Above his image is the text, Republica ng Pilipinas, Republic of the Philippines. Below is the year of minting, 1971. Marcelo H. del Pilar is honored for his dedication to Philippine independence and press freedom during the Spanish colonial period. His inclusion on the coin symbolizes the nation's pride in its revolutionary past. The reverse displays the coat of arms of the Philippines, including the sun with 8 rays, 3 stars representing Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, a lion and an eagle symbolizing Spanish and American colonial influences. The value 50 centimo is inscribed prominently. This coin was widely used for everyday purchases like street food, jeepney fares, market goods, and small commodities. At that time, 50 centimos could still buy substantial items such as rice, bread, or even a movie ticket in rural areas. Before 1971, the 50 centimo was not consistently issued in every year. Previous versions were made of silver or had different figures and symbols. The design would later change significantly during the Bagong Lipunan series introduced under martial law in the mid-1970s, reflecting Marcos' political reforms. The 1971 version is now sought after by numismatists, coin collectors, for its historical and political symbolism. Coins in uncirculated or proof condition are rare and may command higher prices. Although it is not considered extremely rare, its condition, mint luster, and historical value make it collectible. This coin is a tribute to Filipino nationalism, featuring heroes instead of colonial figures, signaling a shift toward national pride and identity. After years of colonization, it came just 1 year before martial law was declared in 1972. Hence, it is one of the last coins from the post-independence democratic period, before authoritarian rule began. The 1971 50 Sentimo is part of the Pilipino Series of coins, 1967 to 1974, which was the first to feature Filipino national heroes and texts in the Filipino language. The 1971 Philippine 50 Sentimo coin was minted during a critical time in Philippine history, just 1 year before the declaration of martial law in 1972 by President Ferdinand Marcos. At this point, the country was undergoing economic challenges, political unrest, and widespread student protests, particularly against foreign influence and dictatorship. Amid this growing turmoil, the country still attempted to maintain a sense of identity and national pride, which is reflected in the coins minted during this period. The 1971 50 Sentimo coin belongs to the Pilipino Series, the first post-independence coin series in the Philippines to use Tagalog language inscriptions, not English or Spanish. Feature Filipino national heroes instead of colonial figures, represent an effort to promote Filipino nationalism under the 1935 Commonwealth Constitution's influence. This series was introduced under the Central Bank of the Philippines, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. The obverse side of the 50 Sentimo coin shows the face of Marcelo Hilario del Pilar y Gabmaitan, a revolutionary writer, lawyer, and reformist during the Spanish colonial period. He was the second editor of La Solidaridad, the voice of Filipino reformists in Spain. His writings were critical of Spanish abuses and promoted Filipino rights. His portrait on the 50 Sentimo symbolizes press freedom, intellectual revolution, and resistance to colonial injustice. 1971 Philippine peso 0.50 Sentimo was equivalent to half of a full peso, and it had strong purchasing power. With 50 Sentimo, one could buy the value of 50 Sentimo began to drop in real-world value, which eventually led to the discontinuation of high-value Sentimo coins in later decades. President Marcos introduced the Angi Bagong Lipunan, the new society, coinage shortly after martial law. This replaced the Filipino Series by the mid-1970s. The goal was to signal a new beginning, though it was widely criticized as a propaganda move. The 1971 50 Sentimo was among the last to be minted before this major shift. Exact mintage numbers of the 1971 50 Sentimo are not fully published, but it was produced in limited runs compared to 1 peso and 25 Sentimo coins. The coin was, while the 50 Sentimo 1971 isn't considered ultra-rare, coin collectors value it for being part of the original Pilipino Series. Featuring a true Filipino hero, its historical timing right before martial law, its relatively larger size and higher value than other coins from the time. The 197150 Sentimo coin is a symbol of pre-martial law Philippines, a time of press freedom, nationalistic pride, and hopes for a modern, independent future. It holds deep value for those studying Philippine political history, numismatic evolution, revolutionary figures like Marcelo H. del Pilar. The 1971 Philippines 50 Sentimo coin is not just currency, it is a witness to Philippine history, from Marcelo del Pilar's ideals to the edge of a political transformation under martial law. It represents a nation. The year 1971 was a period of major national tension and social unrest in the Philippines. It was marked by violent student protests and political rallies, rising calls for constitutional reform. The first quarter storm 1970-1972, a wave of demonstrations against imperialism, corruption, and Marcos. The 1971 Plaza Miranda bombing, where opposition leaders were attacked during a Liberal Party campaign. In short, the country was in political chaos, yet the economy was still holding on. The currency issued during this year, including the 50 Sentimo coin, reflects a time just before the fall into dictatorship under martial law declared 1972. The Philippine peso was still relatively strong in 1971. The exchange rate was about Philippine peso 6 to $1 USD, and 50 Sentimo Philippine peso 0.50 had real purchasing power. You could buy with 50 centimos. The 197150 Sentimo belongs to the Pilipino Series, which started in 1967 and ended in 1974. This was the first modern coin series to feature the Filipino language and Filipino heroes, replacing the older English series 1958 to 1966 that still carried colonial imagery and language. This shift to Filipino inscriptions, for example, Republica ng Pilipinas instead of Republic of the Philippines, was part of a larger cultural movement toward national identity and pride in local heroes. The obverse front of the coin honors Marcelo Hilario del Pilar y Gabmaitan, 1850–1896, known as Plaridel, his pen name, a leader of the propaganda movement, along with José Rizal and Graciano López Llena, editor of La Solidaridad, the mouthpiece of Filipino reformists in Spain. Del Pilar fought through words, writing articles exposing Spanish abuses in the Philippines. His dream was Filipino autonomy, equality, and press freedom. By putting him on the 50 Sentimo coin, the government honored his intellectual courage and nationalist spirit. During this time, the BSP used foreign mints like the Royal Canadian Mint and U.S. mints for coinage. Due to limited local minting capacity, some coins of the period were struck outside the Philippines. The 1971 Constitution Convention was held to revise the 1935 Constitution. However, this effort was overtaken by the declaration of martial law in 1972. The 1971 coin stands as one of the last truly democratic coins created before the era of dictatorship, where coins would later bear slogans like Angi Bagong Lipunan, the new society is part of Marcos, authoritarian propaganda. After 1971, new coins from 1975 onward were issued under the Angi Bagong Lipunan ABL series. These coins had different portraits and values, emphasized government slogans, reflected the ideological shift under martial law. The 197150 Sentimo is therefore a final edition. From the Free Republic years, circulated coins in fair condition may be worth Philippine peso 20 to 100. In local markets, uncirculated or mint condition coins can fetch $5 to $25 USD. Internationally. Rare era coins off-center strikes. Double die, clipped planchette may be worth more.